Hello, everyone. We'd like to thank you for joining us for Affordable Housing Month. And of course, thank you to our hosts, Housing Santa Cruz County and the Housing Leadership Council of San Mateo County. We're so happy to be here with you all. Thank you for joining us. Costs and benefits of affordable housing design. Today, we will answer the question, what makes the design of affordable housing unique? And that's both unique from the design of other types of housing, as well as design of other types of buildings. And in essence, our goal here is to answer the question today, is affordable housing worth it? I am Kate Conley. I'm a principal and an architect at Architects FORA, here joined by my partner, Sarah.
Hello, everybody. At Architects FORA, our mission is to create vibrant, resilient, and equitable housing at all scales. We believe that everyone deserves a place to call home. I'm Sarah Vaccaro, principal and architect with Architects FORA.
And today we're going to explore with you all what we consider to kind of be the 4 hallmarks unique to the design of affordable homes. These homes are designed with specific resident populations in mind. They celebrate its community context. They are the first line of defense against our housing crisis and the market forces driving it. And they reach a higher echelon of durability, sustainability, connectivity, and accessibility. The first defining aspect of designing affordable homes is that they are designed for specific populations or groups of residents to a far greater extent than market rate housing. Affordable housing serves a range of lower income households as well as specific vulnerable populations. So there are populations who are vulnerable to being rent burdened, paying more than 30% of their gross household income on rent, vulnerable to being displaced from their housing, as well as populations who are experiencing homelessness. And so this need to serve specific resident groups is often due in part to the specific funding sources for affordable housing being tied to serving low-income households, large families, seniors, transitional age youth, or TAY youth, we call them sometimes, adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities, the IDD community, veterans, families, and individuals who are at risk of experiencing homelessness or those who actually have experienced chronic homelessness. These are residents who are critically important to the diversity, health, and thriving of our communities, yet the market-driven housing economy does not provide affordable or supportive housing options for them. So oftentimes we're designing affordable housing developments that serves multiple special needs populations under one roof. Here are a few of our firm's recently completed projects and the populations that they serve. So the question we ask ourselves as designers of affordable housing is, how can we best design spaces to support the specific populations who will live here while also acknowledging that range of needs and preferences? So for our firm, we rely on a range of research to inform our design process and our design strategies that we're going to employ in our developments. A few examples of that research are here. We very much employ trauma-informed design strategies. Research estimates that around 70% of Americans report trauma exposure, and trauma is a nearly universal experience for folks with mental health and substance abuse disorders, those living in poverty, those who have experienced violence, and those who have experienced homelessness, many of the very people who are served by shelters, supportive housing, and affordable housing. So we take great care to create spaces that support healing and restoration for those who have experienced higher levels of trauma. And really, these design principles also create spaces that just benefit us all. We also design for inclusion based on the Housing Design Standards for Accessibility and Inclusion by the Kelsey. Many of you may know the Kelsey here, to create spaces that serve people with all abilities, allowing them to easily navigate and feel at home. And we utilize a design process centered on the human and resident experience as well. We design through a lens of empathy, improving the quality of life for our future residents, backed by research on how humans experience and interact with the spaces around them. And lastly, we engage in a continuum of our own research, starting with community engagement, specifically with future resident populations, working sessions with resident service providers, and we also conduct post-occupancy evaluations of our completed and occupied projects to better inform the next project, especially if it is of the same resident type as one that we're working on currently. Sarah.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. I'll walk through a few examples here of how these research-backed design strategies are implemented in our work. So first and foremost, trauma-informed care upholds tenets of providing safety, a sense of control, choice, collaboration, and empowerment to the residents and staff of our projects. An example of trauma-informed design coming out of trauma-informed care, supporting the sense of control and empowerment, is designing spaces that mitigate sensory overload while also allowing for sensory delight. The image on the left here shows one of our unit entry alcoves at the Solaire Apartments. By recessing the entry, this allows residents a moment of respite as they transition between the more public corridor space and the privacy of their homes. The change in flooring from hard vinyl plank in the corridor to the soft carpet serves as a tactile experience of welcome home. The color-coded alcoves by floor allow for easy wayfinding. All of these strategies help to mitigate sensory overload as residents transition to coming home. On the right side are examples of the same project providing sensory delight. An amazingly talented local artist, Morgan, added murals in our courtyard and at the entry to the building, reflecting the local flora and fauna. And every level in the building has views to these murals as residents and staff move throughout their day. Other strategies of sensory delight include providing views to nature, access to fresh air, quieter spaces for respite, as well as more active spaces for community building. Another trauma-informed design principle is to create opportunities for visual connection for safety and calming. We design our entry experiences, allowing residents to visually see ahead so they can decide if they want to interact with the people that are already in those spaces or choose another path. In Solaire Apartments plan image here on the left, we have prioritized views from the front desk and the staff offices into the lobby, to the front door, into the community room kitchen, so that they can keep an eye on the space, which in turn allows them to make it more available for residents to use. For the residents, the visual connection allows them to see into that space before entering and decide if the people in the setting in that space feel comfortable at that time for them to enter. If you'd like to learn more about trauma-informed design principles, let us know in the channel, and we have a bunch of resources we can share out at the end of the meeting. Okay. As Kate mentioned, we are a committed organization to upholding and designing to the housing design standards for accessibility and inclusion issued by the Kelsey. The worksheet, this is an example of one of the worksheet guides on the left here. It shows the areas of impact, additional benefits, and level of design available for each element of the standards. An example of inclusion and universal design strategies include creating natural, integrated, easy to understand wayfinding signage and decor that is usable for people of all abilities. The wayfinding graphic on the right here is for our Mitchell Place Park project, which integrates color coding and large numerical signage for the floors for residents. And in addition, the number of vertical boards corresponding with the floor number provides a tactile wayfinding option in addition to the visual cues. When designing for people and residents of all abilities, it's important to provide different sensory experiences. Spaces that are quiet, lower light levels, less use of pattern and color can be sensory calming spaces. Spaces with more activity, visual interest can be sensory rich experiences, and allow residents options to choose or use a space that best aligns with their needs is a really important design strategy. In Mitchell Park Place, we were able to provide a variety of sensory calming and stimulating spaces, including the sensory garden image here, which shows a range of tactile, smell, sound, and movement experiences, including the labyrinth in the foreground here, and there's also a swing in the background. If you'd like to learn more about the Kelsey and the housing design standards for accessibility and inclusion, again, let us know in the chat window, and we'll provide resource links at the end of the meeting for that as well. In our human experience design approach, we create personas to represent a range of the future resident populations, and then consider the lived experience of those residents' personas in our design process, allowing us to design with understanding and empathy. This process starts with asking who might be the people who would qualify or be eligible to live at this project. For example, our Capitola 38th Avenue project. These are some of our personas. These are made up, but they're based on the potential populations that the project will serve and the demographics of that location. And then we ask questions to better understand each persona's typical day. Consider how that person their day would start. How would they move throughout the site? Where do they need to commute to? What will be their favorite outdoor spaces? Coupled with our human experience design research, we then look for opportunities to incorporate design features that will better support those experiences. For example, when considering a couple living in a one-bedroom apartment where demographic research shows one person may work from home and need a home office, how can we provide flexibility in the unit layout to accommodate a desk? At a site organizational level, we map a day in the life of a resident persona moving throughout the site. This exercise can reveal opportunities to improve adjacencies between common area spaces, outdoor spaces, reinforce direct pathway connections, or simple yet important amenities like parking for a wagon near the parking lot so residents have an easy way to bring their groceries from their car to their home. The goal of layering human experience design process into our projects is to find more meaningful ways to improve the design at a unit, common area, circulation, and site organization level to best support the future resident populations who will call this place home. Continuing on the topic of common areas or amenity spaces, our projects have community rooms and outdoor spaces for people to gather and entertain outside of their units. While these are similar types of spaces that you'll find in other market rate multifamily housing developments, in affordable housing, these spaces are also partnered with resident service providers who will provide rich programming in these spaces to support community building, life skills training, after-school programs, and financial stability courses. More successful common areas remain flexible while also providing furniture and areas that imply a specific use of the space. In addition, co-locating areas with different uses adds a level of vibrancy and community feel. The image here on the left shows a dedicated computer workstation, as well as flexible open seating areas, and then a direct connection to the outdoor courtyard space beyond. In our large family developments, it's important to design safe spaces for younger children to play and other age-appropriate spaces for school-age children to hang out, all while allowing parents to have a clear visual connection to these spaces for supervision. For our Woodside Road project in Redwood City, the building wraps around a multi-level exterior courtyard with the laundry room overlooking the playground and the community room opening up to quieter outdoor spaces. Based on input from the resident service staff early on in the design process, we located the the computer lab and the meeting room adjacent to the staff offices on the ground level so that they could have easy supervision of those spaces and again, make them more open to the residents using them. For many of our affordable housing projects, there are a number of resident service provider organizations supporting the residents with case management, access to healthcare, employment opportunities, life skills, and financial support training. These service providers are typically on site with offices and meet with residents regularly. In permanent supportive housing for residents transitioning out of homelessness or other special needs populations, resident service providers are critically important to supporting residents through this transition to being housed and ultimately staying stably housed. On the left here is a list of 4 organizations supporting our residents at IMAC Village in downtown San Jose. The plan on the right shows a suite of property management and resident support service offices adjacent to the lobby and community room of another project in San Jose. And the design of these spaces allows the service providers to provide the critically important support and ensure the safety as they are working with the residents, as well as builds a healthy working environment among the team. It's really important for the service providers and property management to all be working collectively together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then moving on, the next tenet of affordable housing design is that at its best, it's designed to reflect the community that it serves and celebrate the unique place where it's located. Our team really dives deep into history and culture to create buildings that celebrate place. Finding the community context of each new project requires in-depth research into history, demographics, geography, and culture. If you want to go to the next slide, Sarah. For a recent project in Redwood City, we partnered with a firm called Determined by Design to generate design concepts based on local history of the different indigenous and migrant cultural groups who had occupied our project site and its surroundings. Our goal here is to understand who will live in these homes, who lives in the area, the history of this place, and how we can celebrate all of these aspects in the design. A place that reflects and responds to its context will be better accepted, loved, protected, and invested in. We also actually ask the community their opinion. We believe that design is better with diverse perspectives at the table. And in designing affordable homes, we make space for really thoughtful conversations and create meaningful activities so that the community members and future residents can share authorship over the new development. We engage the community early for multiple reasons. We want to learn their values and priorities and let those inform the design. We want to build relationships and a support base for the project. Any of you who have shepherded an affordable housing development through entitlements and permitting understands the need for that strong support base. And to help the future residents of the affordable homes be better understood in this community context. Our goal is to incorporate some level of community engagement into our design process for all of our projects, even if streamlining legislation allows for us to bypass this step. A client of ours has termed this friendly SB 35, patent pending, but we love that phrase. We all understand that we're tackling a housing crisis. So our goal is always to get quality housing built faster, but we never want to do that at the expense of involving the communities where we're building that housing. And what we've learned is that when we co-create places with the community, we share that sense of ownership and pride over the resulting design. And we know that designs that are loved last. After a building is complete, the goal is that all the engagement, research, and intentions that went into the design of the building actually create a place that allows for healing, restoration, and community building among the new residents, the staff, and the surrounding neighborhood. These are some photos from a recent community building event we hosted at IMAC Village about 18 months after the residents had moved in. Not only did our team get to connect with some of the staff, residents, and their pups too, and create some cute potted plants to decorate their homes and offices, we had a chance to hear really invaluable feedback on how the building was working for these folks, and we identified some near and long-term improvements to help it work even better in the future.
Thanks, Kate. The extent of the housing crisis is coupled, skipping ahead. No, that's right.
You're good.
The extent of the housing crisis, coupled with the limited land resources available in the Bay Area, drives our need for higher density developments, and in turn is a key design driver overall. As this group of housers knows and is well aware, we have been underproducing housing for decades, leaving an enormous deficit in homes available compared to the population demand in the US. Some estimates show that America is short around 3.2 million homes. And as we all know, there's not a lot of available sites for development in the Bay Area. When a property does become available to redevelop for housing, we need to make the most of it. As you can imagine, the nice rectangular, flat, ideally located sites for development are quickly snatched up by market rate housing, leaving what we affectionately and begrudgingly call the leftover sites for affordable housing developments. These are three of our current project sites for affordable housing around the Bay Area. They are typically very odd-shaped properties, oftentimes directly adjacent to freeways and or train tracks. All of these factors add a level of complexity and additional mitigation measures that are needed to make these plots of land suitable for people to live on. For an example, the site in the middle is roughly 20 feet away from Highway 87 in downtown San Jose on the western property line. The acoustical rating required for the windows, the walls, and the systems facing the highway is 3 times what a typical building would have. That drives up upfront cost of construction, not to mention impacts the quality of those units. The site on the far left is a very odd-shaped footprint with lots of jogs. This required innovative structural solutions and creative floor plan layouts to make sites like this work. Our challenge as designers is to evaluate how many homes we can accommodate on a site within the constraints of the zoning code in a cost-effective manner so that the project is competitive for financing and create a quality place for people to call home. This is an example of 3 fit studies for a group of sites in downtown Santa Barbara, evaluating different numbers of housing units, different types of housings, and how they could fit into the neighborhood context. While creating as many new and different housing options for our communities is a core goal, we do not sacrifice the need to provide quality living spaces that support a thriving community culture. All of this to set the stage for one of the main questions we are often are asked. If it's affordable housing, why does it cost so much to build? There are a number of different forces at play that impact the upfront construction cost of affordable housing. First, affordable housing is financed through government subsidies at the federal, state, and local levels, all of which come with a unique set of requirements. They require a minimum size of the unit and a minimum or a required mix of unit types, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, etc. They require that all common areas and certain percentage of the units be fully accessible to people with different abilities. And they require a minimum amount of support spaces to be included in the development, depending on what type of housing it is. They require a higher threshold for the quality of construction than other project types. And there are often labor requirements for prevailing wage, diversifying the workforce, et cetera, that impact the construction costs. And finally, they require the housing to maintain affordable rental rates for residents for a minimum of 55 years. These are all really good requirements to create quality, safe, equitable housing and employment opportunities, and they come at a higher cost. In addition to meeting all of these requirements, the funding through these sources is extremely competitive to be awarded. So projects need to provide as many units as possible at a cost-effective price tag to be competitive for this financing. In order to meet the goal of providing as many units as possible, the units need to be of an efficient size while also meeting the greater clearance requirements for accessibility. The need for resident support spaces on site is real and requires additional space within the building, in addition to the building needing a higher level of safety and security infrastructure. Higher density buildings require more complicated construction types and contractors with skilled labor forces, who in turn do require to be paid a livable wage. Investing in durable and quality materials is key upfront, as this reduces the cost of maintenance and operation and future renovations, all of which help to keep the project at an affordable rental rate for 55 years, as well as a balanced budget. So in summary, there is a high bar set for how affordable housing is to be designed and constructed, which drives up the construction cost, as well as a real need to be as cost effective as possible for the project to be awarded funding.
Absolutely. Yeah. And these next few slides touch on the most commonly asked questions we've heard about why multifamily housing looks the way it does. These are the questions we get peppered with at conferences and gatherings. So we thought we would bring them all to the table and provide our FAQ, as it were, for affordable housing design. The first one is always, why is it so tall? This one's pretty simple, of course, limited land. You saw those sites Sarah spoke about highlighted in yellow, and the need for more homes requires that we build taller buildings. The model here is for Roosevelt Park Apartments, which sits on 1/3 of an acre and will provide 80 new homes. That is a density of 266 dwelling units per acre. In addition to providing 80 homes, the building also includes a full floor of commercial space and 2 floors of parking to support the program and meet the urban village zoning requirements that it's cited in. When we get into densities like this, requiring 9 stories within an 85-foot height limit, understanding the interplay between the building code, types of construction, and construction cost efficiencies is really important. For buildings that are over 6 or 7 stories tall, concrete construction becomes the most viable and cost-efficient option. So the next question, why does the ground floor look like a concrete bunker? And the short answer is parking. Parking ratios, number of stalls, where the parking goes, these are always contentious issues in any housing development, but especially affordable housing. Parking that lives within a building is required to be enclosed in a higher and safer construction type, concrete construction usually. And parking also typically needs to go on the ground floor for easy access. There's really no way around that. And so underground parking structures are not typically financially feasible in an affordable housing setting. And that's why the ground floor often looks like a concrete bunker to accommodate the number of parking spaces required and keep the residential units safely separated above. So our challenge as designers is to accommodate these requirements while still creating a welcoming and active street frontage that supports a pleasant human scale experience on the sidewalk. The next question, why is it so boxy? Every site we get for affordable housing development is precious. So we maximize the number of units we can get on site and build them as efficiently as possible. And that means stacking the same type of unit on top of each other all the way up the building. As you can imagine, stacking up a bunch of the same size boxes results in a pretty boxy looking building overall. This is a perfect example of the cost-based trade-offs we make during design. Sure, we could put more of our budget into articulating the facade and roof lines to create unique building forms that look less boxy. But the trade-offs are typically fewer or smaller units to make that happen, which isn't great for the residents who actually get to live in those units, and less budget to go toward other more impactful design elements like high performance wall assemblies or visually interesting cladding materials. It could honestly even compromise the amount of budget and space available for interior on-site amenity spaces to serve resident populations who live inside the building. Historically, the solution to the boxy building problem, as we'll call it, was applied ornamentation, like trims, cornices, to make the building more visually interesting. Today, the trend is more to introduce breaks in the building mass to create visual interest. Many objective standards, which we'll touch on in just a little bit, also require these pushes and pulls to break up the facade, which further reinforces that blocky modern apartment building aesthetic. Next question, why are there so many windows? This question is like the little sister of why is it so boxy? When the average person thinks of an apartment building, they think of this kind of relentless grid of windows that lends the building a certain bulk. And the answer is it's because there's a lot of rooms, and they're all competing for their own window space on the exterior wall. The plan on the right shows all of the rooms behind each of the windows shown in the photo on the left. Each bedroom is required to have a window to the outside, and living rooms, while they don't technically require one, definitely benefit from a window as well. And it also lends light to the kitchen behind it in our typical unit designs. And the structure and ventilation between the windows generally wants to line up vertically to work efficiently. And so you have all the required clearances. We don't want your bathroom exhaust smells floating back in through your open window, right? So you get locked into that kind of typical grid pattern. There's sometimes a bit of staggering you can do, like we did on the building on the previous slide, but that adds complexity, which adds, you guessed it, cost. So we tend to do this judiciously and really only employ it on highly visible street facades. Next question, do the residents have any privacy? Sometimes when we're working on one of these awkwardly shaped sites that Sarah mentioned, we'll end up with some tight courtyards and we need to get creative to maintain our residents' privacy. We'll frequently introduce angled fin walls like the ones you see here, or we'll make sure to offset or stagger windows that face each other so that no one's view is of someone else's apartment window. Many cities also require us to do view studies from the apartments in our proposed development to the homes surrounding them as well. And inside the building, we are continuously refining the way our walls are built to provide good acoustic separation between units through a combination of code requirements, performance testing, and to make sure we have acousticians on the design team advising us. Our favorite, why are all new buildings covered in rectangles? You're talking about what we refer to in our industry as a rain screen. These are panels that, yes, are usually rectangular, that get attached to the building with typically metal pieces that create an air gap behind it. This system can help us create a building envelope with better thermal performance, which reduces the amount of energy needed to heat and cool the building. It also just provides a visual contrast to stucco. Stucco or cement plaster is the least expensive yet wonderfully fire resistant way to clad a multifamily apartment building. But most cities in the Bay Area require more than one exterior material to be used on the building for visual interest, which in all honesty were probably created mostly in response to the building industry's deep love affair with stucco. So rain screens are a relatively cost-effective and high-performance way to introduce that variety into the facade. In this picture of Lee Avenue Senior Apartments, the stair tower and the back buildings are stucco, while the volume on the corner is clad with a rain screen system. Why do they all look the same? Another one of our favorite questions. We feel you on this one. As much as we strive for each and every one of our buildings to be a unique reflection of place, you can see we're playing by a lot of rules and very practical design constraints already. And another set of rules to layer on top of that are objective standards or form-based codes, which many Bay Area cities have adopted in response to ministerial or streamlining requirements, especially for affordable housing developments. We're actually big fans of objective standards because they're a benefit in terms of expediting approvals because they create a clear set of rules for us to play by when we're working with our friends at the planning department to get our projects entitled quickly. But we do agree that if these standards or the resulting designs don't respond to the context of the place and the people in that community, then they can lead to a homogeneous looking end result. This is a big reason we take the time to do community engagement and understand who and where we are designing for. Market rate developments are a for sale product and can fall victim to what we call the assembly lineization of design that meet the letter of standards like these and simply move on.
Awesome. We welcome any other commonly asked questions about affordable housing or housing in general and why it looks the way it looks. So please add those to the chat and we'll get to those in a minute. We'll wrap up with our fourth topic with a few notes about durability, sustainability, connectivity, and accessibility goals for affordable housing design. We employ a range of strategies to create high quality and durable buildings. Remember, our clients will own and operate these buildings for a minimum of 55 years. I think Lena asked a question, or Lonnie, I'm sorry, asked a question about why only 55 years. And it's a minimum requirement. It's a deed restriction to provide affordable housing for a minimum of 55 years. Sometimes it's 99 years. It depends on the funding and the jurisdiction. But that's just the minimum. And then obviously the owner can extend that period of time longer than that and hopefully will. But this means that the maintenance and operational costs need to be balanced with the lower rental income and all work out to be a balanced budget. Examples of these strategies include specifying exterior materials that have integral color and don't require the building to be repainted every few years. On the interior, we specify durable flooring materials that are easy to maintain and repair or replace if they get damaged. Simple but impactful strategies like installing wood trim or corner guards along corridor corners that protect the walls from getting dinged up as people are moving in and out of the building, keep the building looking nice, and are much easier to replace than redoing wall finishes. Affordable housing design is sustainable and resilient. Our nonprofit housing developer clients own and operate these buildings for the long term, and they deeply care about the residents and providing affordable housing solutions, which includes keeping utility costs at a reasonable rate for the residents to afford. For this reason, we invest in energy efficient building envelopes, high thermal ratings and insulation, as well as efficient building systems like the heating and cooling systems, efficient lighting fixtures, low flow plumbing fixtures, all to help reduce utility costs that the residents will pay. We also acknowledge these buildings are our residents' homes. They are their place of refuge in the event of an emergency or a natural disaster. And it's becoming ever more apparent that we need to provide layers of resiliency measures in our building to support extended power outages. Our designs include maximizing PV energy generation on the roof or over parking areas, that power can then be stored in a battery backup system to, on a daily basis, supplement power during peak demand times and lower the cost. And in the case of an emergency, provide critical backup power for extended power outages. Affordable housing design is connected and transit-oriented. Our clients and design teams are passionate about improving the environment around our housing for residents in the broader community. So we invest in creating walkable, bikeable communities by building housing near existing or planned public transportation or alternative transportation to cars, and amenities like grocery stores, schools, retail. Housing that is well connected and transit-oriented is less dependent on vehicles, therefore reducing costly parking requirements and providing for a lovely human-centered quality of life. Affordable housing design is accessible for all abilities. Affordable housing that receives public funding and will serve a wide range of people is required to meet accessibility needs for people with different mobility and communication abilities. Inside the units, this means providing enough clearances at appliances, doors, around furniture to maneuver. In the building, it's providing elevator access or some other form of access to all the floors and common areas, as well as tactile signage and audible warning for those with visual impairments or who are hard of hearing. In our practice, we include a special focus on incorporating inclusive and universal design strategies so that people of all abilities can thrive. Oftentimes, these are low-cost strategies that can require that just require a thoughtful design process and clear wayfinding or considering different sensory experiences of a space. So I'll pass back to you, Kate, to summarize.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah. So what makes affordable housing design so different from the design of other types of housing? It centers around the people who will live and work there. It reflects the community context and supports community building. It creatively responds to the need for more homes while doing so as cost effectively as possible. And it's durable, sustainable, connected, and accessible for all. So thank you everyone for attending our session today. There's some great questions in the chat that I cannot wait to get to. We know that was a lot of information. And if you couldn't absorb all those details, we've got your back. This presentation has been recorded and we are happy to send out the slides as well. And Sarah mentioned some of the resources we use as our research basis for our design decisions. We're happy to send that to you too. So stay tuned.